Hi, I'm Elizabeth Rue from Vanderbilt University in Nashville, Tennessee in the United States. And I'm going to be talking a little bit about selecting your best school for your child with Prader-Willi syndrome. So it's really important if you have a child with PWS to actually find the school that will actually best support their needs. So you already know a lot about your child and you're actually an expert in their syndrome and how they present and what they're going to really need to be a good student and be supported in a school that you choose. I think it's really important first to do your homework. Talk to other parents, talk to organizations, and find out what kinds of supports your child may actually have access to and will need to actually be a really successful student. If there are teachers that they can recommend or schools that they can recommend, I think it's really important to know some of those things before you actually place your child in a school and hope for the best. It's important to kind of do your groundwork, talk to parents, also come up with a profile for your child where you talk about their specific symptoms, how they present, what things may be challenging, and ways that you manage them so that the teacher actually has a heads up of how to best do that. As far as picking a teacher, there are some temperamental qualities that really do seem to work well for kids with PWS. We're looking for teachers who have patience, who are easygoing, who actually are consistent but not authoritarian. Authoritarian teachers don't work well with kids with PWS. Telling them what to do and how to do it and actually orchestrating every moment of their lives makes them more likely to be oppositional and actually have behavior issues. So you're looking for a teacher who's willing to partner with you because that's what you guys are. You're teaming up for your child's success. So it's really important to kind of think about how you communicate with your team, right? So it's important for you to let the teacher know what you're managing at home and how you do it and what's successful, what things you may have tried in the past that haven't worked very well. Maybe even get an idea of what her philosophy is how she teaches and how she kind of best manages some of the issues that we're talking about, be they hyperphagia, temper tantrums, slow processing, hard to stay on task, other kinds of things like skin picking. How would they manage those? And then really kind of helping her prepare to best manage your child in the classroom. So those are some things you can do preemptively. Once you start, it's really great to take a tour of the school. Look at the school building, see where your kid's classroom is going to be, where their cubby is going to be or locker, those kinds of things, so they actually already have in their mind where they're going to be, how it looks, and what the day looks like. Some parents actually pretend that they actually start doing the schedule at home the first 2 weeks before they start school so they can actually have a breakfast and a lunch and a reading class, all like they would have them in school, and they try to get their kid prepared so that before they start, they're actually doing the same things at home that they would be doing at school. It's important to actually get your backpack packed and your lunchbox and all the things that you're going to need so that you're prepared. And then at that point, it's really important to have the teacher maybe meet you at the school before school starts, just so your child can actually get to know them. The teacher can say things like, "I'm so excited that you're going to be in my classroom. I've been looking forward to meeting you." Finding something they have in common, pets, hobbies, anything like that where they can actually find a way to connect before they actually get to school, the school year starting. Once the school year starts, it's important to actually continue to check in. I think it's important to actually have some communication right off the bat with how are you going to send home notes, how are you going to communicate, so that the teacher is aware and that everybody's on the same page. Focusing on the most important features of your child. Some kids have a lot more issues with hyperphagia and eating issues, and so food access, how things are going to be structured in the classroom to keep them safe around food, and then talking about learning specifically. If you don't manage the behavior, it doesn't really matter at that point because you're not going to be able to educate that child. So it's really looking at those kinds of things and really communicating effectively. The child with PWS shouldn't be privy to that communication. It's important for people to actually have some level of feeling safe, like they can be really honest about what's going on, and the kid with PWS not to actually have access to that. What you choose to share is kind of up to you and the teacher, but you guys should definitely be on the same page as far as what you share, and if there are going to be consequences in place for some kind of behavior issue that happens at school, they should be figured out before they happen, not after they happen, because generally kids with PWS don't like to have consequences they don't know are coming. So those things are important. Usually the first couple months are pretty good for some kids, and other kids have a really rocky start. So you have to kind of figure out, is your kid one who has a honeymoon period where they're great for a couple months and then they start to fall apart, or is your kid one that absolutely will fall apart at the beginning, but once they get familiar and consistent and trust the staff to support them, that they'll do well. So it's, again, continuing to check in. And if you have a problem, it's actually dealing with it right off the bat and not letting things escalate. So looking at schools that have a self-contained classroom versus an inclusion classroom. Again, it really matters on the kid, not necessarily the diagnosis. Some kids who are very high functioning may really struggle in a regular classroom. The pace is too fast, the lessons are too fast, and they can't keep up. And so they may have behavior issues in kind of response to that. Other kids do incredibly well in a regular classroom. So again, I think it's just important to look at the different options, see what you have, and be able to figure out which would be the best setting. And it's totally okay after a few months, if you decide this isn't the best setting, to actually take your kid out of that and say, we're going to try something different. If your kid continues to have behavior issues in a certain class or with a certain teacher, I think you have to reevaluate, is this a good setting? Is it a good fit? I think at the end of the day, if your child is doing well emotionally and physically and their weight's being fairly well managed, then they're obviously in the right setting. People focus so much on the academics, except at the end of the day, if your kid's not happy, what difference does it make what they learn? So it's really important to focus on those things first. And honestly, if you meet their emotional and social needs, a lot of times their educational needs will follow. So if your kid is happy, even though they're maybe not excelling the way that you hope they would be, that's okay too, because it means your child at least is not stressed. But if you have a child that's doing really well academically, but every day is having emotional meltdowns and problems at home, then maybe it's not the right setting. I'm actually a big believer that if things aren't working out in the classroom, the first option is to change classrooms or teachers, and the second option is to actually change schools. And so some people do exactly that to find a better fit. I think the stigma is only if you let it be a stigma, right? So it's really important, if you don't see it as being a problem, everybody's got something they're dealing with, but if you don't let it be a problem for you, your kid's going to learn that resilience and the fact that we're not going to let this keep us down. It's just something we need to manage and deal with. It's not the end of the world. And so as far as which classroom is best and which school is best, I think you have to just kind of read the cues. And it's not what your kid says, it's what they do, right? So your kid can say school is going great, except the teacher says every day they're by themselves. They don't have friends, they're not really being part of the classroom. And some kids find in a smaller classroom with 3 or 4 kids, they can actually be the star of the show versus being an extra when it comes to being a class of 30. So I think you just have to kind of read the signals and figure out what's the best fit. At the end of the day, there's no right or wrong. It's really about best fit for your child. Sometimes it's helpful to have a student be your kid's buddy, help them get off the bus, put their backpack away, their lunchbox, all those kinds of things so that they know they're not alone. They have somebody they can ask questions to that's not a teacher and an authority figure, but somebody they can actually ask questions to. And it's also a great way for your kid to connect and socialize in school. Sometimes kids with PWS struggle when it comes to finding a friend who's like-minded. So again, having that in place so that you don't have to keep trying to, have your kid reach out to other kids and maybe be rebuffed. It's really important to do those things. Those are some of the most important things, and to continue to reevaluate. When you get towards the mid-year, it's important to have a check-in meeting. How are things going? What's good? What's not good? And actually recalibrate as you need to. If you get all the way through half year and things are going well, it's important about March or April to actually check in with the teacher about the next year. What went well? What didn't go well? What do we need to put in plans for next year? And if the teacher was great, have that teacher train the teacher for next year. Actually have them meet with them, talk about what worked, what didn't work. And I think all the way from the teacher up to administration, making sure that everyone understands your kids' food issues, what they need, what they don't need, and to really put in place a very positive environment. If you want your kid to learn, it's important for you to put together a positive team and really focus on that part of it and really not focus on the negative stuff. Don't get bogged down in the negative, because your kid's going to have issues at times. It's more important to focus on staying the course and really looking at the future and how your kid's being educated. So those are the kind of the most important things. But again, working within your community, within your state or country, and trying to figure out the best fit, the best team approach to actually educating a kid with PWS.